Welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm Johan Landgren. I hope you're great. Today I have a really exciting episode for you. Recently I was invited to Heart Aerospace Hangar Day as an investor in the company, where the pioneering electric plane developer unveiled their plans for the world's first 30-seater electric airplane, the ES30, and a new factory where they will build it, as well as new purchase orders from Air Canada, and much more. And today I have the CEO and founder of Heart Aerospace, Anders Forslund, back on the Evolution Show to guide us. You definitely don't want to miss today's episode. And next week, Anders Forslund is back for part 2 of our conversation to talk more of the technical details of the ES30 plane, including answering many of the most common questions about the new electric plane from Heart Aerospace. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to get to know more about Anders Forslund and the background of Heart Aerospace, check out some of my previous episodes here on the Evolution Show. I provided the links below. But before we get going, I want to take the opportunity to thank all the followers of Evolution Show that have supported me over the last couple of years. We are now a community of more than 1,000 people. So thanks a lot for your support, both to the subscribers and everybody else that has tuned in to the Evolution Show. It really means a lot, so thank you. I promise many more inspiring episodes and guests coming up. Finally, if you liked today's episode and you want to support the show, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome back to the Evolution Show, Anders Forslund.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I think it's the 4th or the 5th time you're on the show, so I'm happy to follow up what you're doing.
Yeah, it's becoming a really good tradition, this, and we're really excited to be speaking with you. And I think your viewers have been able to follow a little bit, the history of this company. So I want to keep this going.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to hear that. And of course, we have to talk about your new hangar, the recent event, the Heart Aerospace Hangar Day. And I was fortunate to see what you were doing, to come and visit. And I'm an investor in the company, so I was there with a lot of other people, media and so forth. And we learned about the new Heart ES30 plane. And also you unveiled a new factory that you will build there at the same location. But of course, people are wondering about the new plane. So let's start with that, I thought. Can you tell us about the Heart ES30 plane and when can we see it start flying?
Yeah, so a little bit about the background here. So, we started this here in Sweden because we saw a market in the Nordics. And really designing, so we came up with the concept of the ES19, which is this 19-passenger aircraft that has only electric power and is designed for the market really in the Nordics. But as we unveiled at our Hangar Day, we now have Air Canada's made a purchase order and also an investment. And since previously we have United Airlines as our anchor customer. So. And at our Hangar Day, we also unveiled announced a lot of different new airlines that we're working together with that we have in our advisory board, including Air New Zealand in New Zealand, but really places all over the world. So this niche product that we were building has turned out to have a global appeal. And what we wanted to do was to meet that market, the ES19 had to change. And it was challenges with operating conditions, so we can't operate a Part 23 aircraft in scheduled commercial service in the US. It was about the weight limitations, which was becoming increasingly a little luggage that we could carry if we wanted to keep below the Part 23 or CS23 limitation of 8,600 kilos. And also it was the issue of reserves, which actually led us to announce that we're now having this thing we call the reserve hybrid configuration, where we're actually running a small turbo generator that we can actually turn on when we're flying further than 200 kilometers. That can be to extend the range or also to actually, like if you're, for instance, being redirected to an airport, so for those extra reassurance and meeting all these reserve requirements. So essentially a plane needs to be able to circle for 45 minutes around an airport if there for some reason can't land, and then also have enough fuel to be redirected to another airport, and that can be nominally it's about 100 nautical miles away, which is 185 kilometers. So that's why we also introduced this new hybrid configuration. And just to be really clear about this, this is we're not doing the old aircraft anymore. We've switched focus and we're working entirely on the ES30, and it's one configuration. The ES30 is one aircraft, but we are seeing different use cases. So it is you can fly up to 200 kilometers with all electric operations. So that's without turning the turbo generator on. But you still need the turbo generator there because in the scenario of having to use reserves or having to fly to an alternate. So that is always on every configuration of the plane. But then this is our bread and butter. This is our focus, to fly these short hops, because that's when, we don't have to refuel, we don't have to use the turbo generator, we don't have to wear the turbo generator, and it's really only there for reassurance. But we know that for airlines, even if they can fly most of their routes 200 kilometers, they still have the issues of logistics, moving the aircraft around, moving it to service, and they also want to have route flexibility. So, they want to have the same type of aircraft flying different routes. So essentially, by engaging the turbo generator, you can fly much farther. So for 400 kilometers, you're emitting about half the CO2 as a conventional turboprop aircraft. And as you go further and further, it gets like diminishing returns. But flying, for instance, an 800 kilometer route, then you can do that with 25 passengers. But then you have to load up on so much fuel so that actually that weight of the passengers has to be getting somewhere. So then you fly that with 25 passengers. But it is really, we can also push this longer. We can make ferry configurations. If we have an empty aircraft, we can fly it even longer. And that's not really a use case, but it's important for the logistics of this aircraft. Remember that this aircraft has to be delivered, to places like New Zealand and to small islands across the world. And it's not like a car that you can roll on the back of a trailer and transport everywhere. Aircraft needs to have final assembly in a controlled environment, and then they need to be test flown, and you can't take it apart and put it back together without, having a production organization, right?
Yeah, and just to clarify, to summarize what you just said, 200 kilometers you can fly fully electric, but on board you have these turbo generators, so you can have this as a reserve, or you could fill up with more fuel. So if let's say you want to fill up, you want to go this 800 kilometer stretch, you will still have the 200 kilometer battery, and you would add, if I understand you correct, you would add 400 kilometers in terms of fuel. So you would have 600 kilometers, and then on top of that, you would have 200 kilometers of reserve fuel. Is that correct?
Yeah,
or do you have
but if you're flying the 400 kilometer route, like if you're operating 400 kilometers, you're carrying more fuel because you're also carrying the 185 185 kilometers of reserves. So, and then you're carrying the 45 minutes or 185 kilometers of alternates, and then 45 minutes of reserves. So you could probably, if you wanted to fly it till it's empty, you could fly 700 kilometers or something like that with that. But you're never going to do that. And it's also important because you're also keeping some charge in the battery left, because the turbo generator is sized only for the cruise segment. So the power needs to come from, like if you're, for instance, doing a touch and go, if you have a botched landing and you have to, go up again and you have to essentially do a takeoff again, a lot of energy needs to be left in the batteries. And this is also a good thing. So we're not completely depleting the batteries in 200 kilometers. We're actually keeping a substantial fraction of the batteries left for all of our operations. And that also helps us with charging times.
And my point here is to clear out that you're still going for fully electric, but you need to have the reserve, and in some cases, some stretches, there will be the option for the aviators to airlines to go a little bit longer, but then they would add more fuel simply to the plane, and there are fuel.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like the day-to-day operation. So, for instance, when we looked at this, we spoke to Mesa Airlines, for instance, who operated hundreds of small aircraft, hundreds of 19-seaters, to over 100 different locations, to communities that have since lost service. In the 1990s, they flew this, right? And their average route length was about 170 miles, which is about 272 kilometers for like hundreds of planes, right? Or 100 planes. And then, so half of that is less than 272 kilometers, and half of that is more. And if we're looking at not delivering just on that market, but also, the entire US market, the Canadian market, the market in Europe, the market in places like New Zealand, really all over the world, we're at a place where we cannot deliver enough aircraft to meet the demand. And by the time we can, we will be on our second generation batteries. So it's really about trying to be really clever about what you do when. And I think that the thing about electric planes, even if they have a turbo generator, is that they are going to have the best unit economics on the shortest hops. So you want to start from the very short ones, and then people might say, hey, but if it's 200 kilometers, I might as well take a train. But you can't really do that if you're, or take a car. But that's hard if you're on the island of Gotland, for instance, in Sweden, or if you're in between Bergen and Stavanger, which is, takes 30 minutes to fly and can take 6 hours to drive. Or if you're going from Aspen to Denver in Colorado, and you have to, drive through the Rockies, generally a lot of traffic, you can save a lot of time. And also in the sort of hub feeder model of actually, if you're going to Aspen, you're probably coming from somewhere else in the country, and you can be at the airport and you can check in where you're at your final destination. So there's a lot of use cases for this.
Moving on to the factory, I have to talk about that as well. I mean, you unveiled at the Hangar Day that you're going to build a new factory, assembly and research and so on. Can you tell us about the factory briefly, and also where it will be built?
So first of all, we're now here in Gothenburg Säve Airport, which used to be called Gothenburg City Airport. There used to be a commercial airport here, but it hasn't been for the last 8 years or so. And now actually we're working together with the landlords here, Castellum, and the city of Gothenburg and Business Region Gothenburg, to actually turn this into our main campus. So the hangars that we have here, we used to think of them as being super big, and you were actually here for our hangar day, but we're already 136 people and it's getting too small. So actually when we're getting to the production phase of this, we need 3 things. We need new engineering offices where we can be up to 500 engineers. New head offices where we can be up to 500 employees, because we're not only engineers. And we need a flight test center so that we can test fly these aircraft. And that will start in 2026. And then we need a production facility so that we can produce aircraft. And we're going to be able to produce up to 120 aircraft per year here in Sweden. So those 3 things come together, and we're calling this Northern Runway. So it is our name for this campus, and it's going to be located here at this airport. And I don't know if you got the chance to go around here, but there's so much activity at this airport. There's the Swedish Electromobility Test Lab, which is going to be just next door to us. There's some testing for autonomous cars. This is becoming a new hotspot for global electromobility. And this is also where we'll be testing our aircraft and building our company.
Yeah, but the factory looks amazing from the pictures. And right now you already have purchase orders for 230 planes approximately, if my calculations are right, and they are from United Airlines, of course, and Mesa Airlines, and
also from Air Canada. Yeah, and also
Air
from
Canada, exactly.
Yeah.
Air Canada, yes, definitely. Air Canada.
And then we have 96 LOIs, and we have an airline advisory board with even more more companies. So we're seeing that this is we found a very popular product. So yes, so yeah, we are production constrained. It's going to be challenging, but that's also why we launched Northern Runway as a blueprint for further expansion. So the idea that we put Northern in there is just also to allude to the fact that we're eventually going to be a Western runway, Eastern runway, Southern runway. Only time will tell what's actually where we're gonna put these facilities, but it's been amazing, both before Hangar Day, but really after, to see the amount of interest we've had from different regions around the world about where we can establish our next test facility. Remember that these are electric planes, so they are, even with the turbo generator, they are range constrained, so it doesn't make financial sense to have so much mass production here in Gothenburg to deliver to North America. So we need to have some sort of manufacturing facility, there, and eventually in different places of the world as well.
Yeah, so that was actually my follow-up question. I mean, the planes that you will have to, I guess you would have to in some way put them together in the US. You can't just fly them over there. So because they are obviously first in line, if they have 100 planes, obviously, I guess they're sitting and saying, we want the first planes or some of the first planes. So is that the plan to, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. And that's exactly the case that we have. We're seeing that there's this large market with our investors now in North America, and we also, it's not just the airlines, but many of our other investors, such as BV, and are also in North America. So we're definitely planning for an increased North American presence. But we've also shown, I think, in the way this program has been very successful, is that there's a great opportunity to leverage small countries like the Nordic countries establish, this is our home field in a way. So we want to build our first factory here and take the lessons learned there and apply, and copy paste all over the world. So that's going to be an exciting journey for sure.
If we talk a little bit about investing in the financial part of your company, you already have a number of major investors in Heart Aerospace. I could mention a few, but Breakthrough Energy Ventures, EQT Ventures, United Airlines, Mesa Airlines Group. And there are also other important leading aviation players we will cover a little bit next. But something I'm sure many wonder is how Heart Aerospace how you're planning to fund your huge factory and develop the plane. Obviously, this is a very capital intensive project. And how do you look at this going forward?
Yeah, so first of all, we're not the first big industrial player startup. We've seen, companies like Northvolt leading the way, and we're seeing, in Sweden, there's companies like Northvolt, Einride, Cake, Xshore, Candela, and also the incumbents like Volvo, Polestar, both Volvo AB and Volvo Cars. So we're seeing that it happens, and Northvolt is a great role model in that. What they've done really well is to leverage project financing. So right now we are essentially building a company that is running on equity investments, but as we progress to increase the degree of maturity, we can also take the loans, and those are also loans where there are green guarantees on the EU Green Deal. So it's kind of a pathway where you start in the early stage. When the project is kind of immature, that's when you get these VCs that are funding you based on your sort of vision and mission. But as you progress, you can get access to more and more capital. Remember that in the European Union has its European Green Deal, which is $1 trillion investment. We're seeing this everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of investments that are being put forth to do this green transition, and so I think that we need this to happen, and everybody everywhere recognizes how to do it. Obviously, it's a new thing. The climate crisis is like a new type of scenario that the world hasn't faced yet. So it's easy. It's sometimes easier to ramp up military spending than it is to ramp up climate tech spending. But I think we're all getting there, and everybody wants these kind of projects to succeed. And so what do we need to get there? Well, we need to prove that we have a market, right? Because we don't want to build a museum piece. We don't want to build something that goes into the history books of a great demonstrator of technology, but then doesn't turn out to be a good business and not something that airlines can use. So that, I think, is like one of these key things that we really want to work on. Not just making sure that this is technically feasible, but also that it's commercially viable.
Yeah. And we have to mention, I think that we talked a little bit about it, that Air Canada is now on board. They're both investing and taking a purchase order of 30 planes.
Yeah.
So how does this partnership and them coming in as an investor, how important or how is that affecting you?
No, I think Canada is kind of like, we have many similarities with the Nordics. I think Canada, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's roughly the same size as the Nordic countries combined. It is like very similar in terms of geography, government, climate, all of this stuff. So and Air Canada is like one of these forward-leaning airlines, especially when it comes to sustainability. And through their subsidiaries, they operate a vast fleet of turboprop aircraft. Like at least before the pandemic, they were the largest operator of Dash 8s, which is this turboprop aircraft that's also flying in Norway in the world. I think they're still somewhere there, and so it's something that we've had on our radar for since the start of the company, and we have a relationship with them going back 3 years. And it's really important also to stress that sometimes we don't want to rush airlines into making an announcement like this, because both for their sake, they want to see that the project is mature, that they're not just supporting a project that's unlikely to succeed, and also for our case, we want to make sure that the airlines that we're working with are actually in it for the long run with us. So we really want to see that this relationship is really good before we make these kinds of announcements. And Air Canada, we've known them for so long and we worked with them for so long, so it's really exciting.
Yeah. And we also have to mention another party. I mean, the legendary Swedish fighter plane and weapons developer Saab also announced that they're also investing $5 million US. And they are becoming a part of the company, obviously. But I also have to mention, I thought it was kind of nice to see that they donated a flight simulator, if I'm correct. Yeah. It looked quite advanced for my amateur eyes. So I mean, for most people in Sweden, we know about it, but for people outside Sweden, it's perhaps good to explain that this is a very, very technical, competent company.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think it's a big deal. So, growing up as a kid in Sweden, especially interested in planes, we didn't have an Apollo program, we didn't have a space program, we didn't have the Concorde like people in Britain or in France. But what we had was Draken and Viggen and Gripen and all of these fighter jets that a small country, going out of the Second World War, where Sweden was neutral in the Cold War. We built, by the 1950s, we had the world's fourth largest air force. It was the U.S., the Soviet Union, China, and then Sweden. And eventually we got up our own production and we started building supersonic fighter jets here in the 1960s. And actually, the place where we are here is like next door to Aeroseum, which is one of these big aerospace museums in Sweden that's housed in an underground bunker, like an underground hangar. So, and I grew up right next door, so obviously I have really strong personal connections to Saab and this history. And fast forward to present day, and they're still building iterations of the Gripen aircraft. They've been pushing technology to different levels. They've been selling these aircraft all over the world, and they're also, collaborating with Boeing on trainers. They do a lot of exciting stuff, and they're an example of a company that does not just, build great products, but also is a really well-run engineering organization. So actually, in my old life of working with product development processes, Saab was a really good example of how they're using, you know, state-of-the-art design methodologies, product life cycle management, all of that stuff. And I'm like really looking forward to working together with them also and understanding how we as a small company can build that maturity in our company. I mean, we're certifying our organization to be like get a design organization approval so that we essentially can build aircraft for people. And that's a process that we've been on, and you know, also interacting with them on that is super, super exciting. It makes sense for us to work with Saab, you know, we couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, and I think you can turn it around. It makes sense for them too, because they are involved with their stuff, but you are going 100% electric, so they can also, I think, learn from you and on your journey.
And I can also mention they also build, you know, a lot of subsystems. They have Saab avionics system. They build flight controls. You know, they do a lot of things. So we've been engaging with them as a potential supplier for long as well. So we think that it's a really interesting company. And again, you know, as a you know, starting your own company and getting Saab to invest in it, it's pretty big for Gallifrey.
Yeah, definitely a testament to you going in the right direction, I think. Yeah, so congratulations for that. But okay, finally, we have to talk about your team a little bit. I mean, you said you're around 130 people right now.
No.
So from 20 countries, more than 20 countries. So if people are interested in your company to even apply for a job or learn more what you do, how can they do so, and what kind of people are you looking for?
Yeah, I think, you know, as we started this company, you know, actually finding people with the right experience of all these kind of stuff, it's kind of a small world, and the people that are building regional aircraft are not that many. So in fact, I would say the majority of our engineering workforce is coming from Brazil, where Embraer has been, we think, a leading manufacturer of, or it's not what we think, they have been a leading manufacturer of regional planes for long. So now we're built that critical mass of experience in our company so that we know how actually how the industry works in all of these different subcategories, right? But we're also, as I mentioned, working closely with the universities. We have to get a new generation that, you know, this might be their first job. We have almost 10 of them that we just had as master's thesis students that have started working. We have a contingent of our employees that are coming from the automotive industry, and that's a growing contingent. So I think that it's we definitely shouldn't be a company with the people that just come from one set of experience. In fact, it's the sort of melting pot. You know, it's the combination of cultures and ideas that are coming from the electromobility industry and the aerospace industry. If you can manage that and unite that, that's really where we think the magic can happen, right? So, we're looking for all kinds of right people.
Yeah, and and thank you so much, Anders. This was a great introduction to, update to what you're doing. And if people want to learn more about the technical details of the plane, we will talk about that in the second part of this conversation. So people stay tuned for that. And again, thank you so much, Anders, for coming back to the Evolution Show.
Thank you, Johan.
That was all for today, folks. I hope you liked the episode. I'm curious to know what you think about the ES-30 airplane and what challenges and opportunities you see with electric planes going forward. Let me know in the comments below, and stick around for next week when I'm back for the second part of my talk with Anders Forslund to discuss many of the technical details of the ES-30 plane. Hopefully you'll find some of your answers then, or perhaps it will raise your curiosity for more questions about the ES-30 plane. Tell me below and I will ask them next time Anders is on the show. And before you go, if you like the Evolution Show, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It really means a lot. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric. I hope to see you next week.